Oseo.
Oseo.
That's a Cherokee greeting. And wave the great feather for the good of it. That's really to, summon favorable spirits. And so that's kind of what we're starting out with. We're almost at the celebration of Halloween. But my emphasis today is going to be the Celtic. Celtic name for the end of October is Samhain, which means summer's end. And that the day following that, November 1st, is the Celtic New Year. So I'm going to be really presenting that, as in Celtic is called Nutcrack Night. But before we get to that, let's get a little bit of background on this, because it seems like, at least in San Diego, Americans, really like this Halloween. They seem to go all out with all kinds of decorations. Our whole neighborhood is full of it, like that. So let's get a little background on this Halloween. Today it's a fun holiday where kids and adults dress up and ask people for candy or tricks. But what is the origin of this holiday? There were, serious cultural tensions about this October 31st. It was seen as an important day that connected, the deceased, the living, and the spiritual worlds. The origins of Halloween can be traced back all the way to the ancient Celtic festival known as Samhain. And like other Gaelic festivals, that's a Gaelic word, it was seen as a liminal time when the boundaries separating the spiritual world and the daylight world were reduced. So Halloween became associated with the appearance of spirits and fairies and ghosts from the mythical other world. When the lines were blurred between the worlds of the living and the dead, the Celts would use this opportunity to worship their ancestors. And some people were a little bit uncomfortable with, also the presence of the darkness and the circulating of loose spirits, So the way that they dealt with that, we're talking about the ancient Celts, they dressed up their little children as demons to confuse those shady spirits. And they even put some kind of bloody looking marks on their doors to avert unwanted spirits there. Another festival at this time is kind of interesting, and it was the day of Pomona. We have a town in San Diego, I think. She was the Roman goddess of fruit and trees, and her symbol that represented her was an apple. It really sounds good. And this may have been the Halloween tradition of apple bobbing, and showed that Roman influence into the Celtic festival, bobbing for apples. About 1,000 years ago, the Christians, or Greco-Roman Church, got with it with All Hallows Day, like that. And it was assigned to November 1st. It was also the day of the Celtic New Year. The Pope renamed, that November 1st as All Saints' Day in honor of Christian saints. And that translated into All Hallows Day, and that's the way it has continued. So All Hallows Evening is the evening before that celebration. So we get a pretty good idea from these things. I'm just seeing if I have anything else, So this time is a time seen as spiritual preparation and wanting the deceased to give their blessings for us to get ready for the winter. So that's more, the Celtic bent to that. And then that gives me to say, sort of, the form or framework for these Coyote talks has been for the past, almost 30 years, we, as the music group, are the Celtic ensemble that we have played at a coffee house for that length of time and a few other places. So I'm not of Celtic ancestry, but I had a lot of things come into this, and have made a study about the ancient Celtic world. And we also had a man here who was a genuine Gaelic scholar, who informed me very much, into the Gaelic language and so forth. So this today is Celtic, and what I'm featuring here is going to be this, like, hallowed evening is in the Celtic is going to be Samhain, Samhain evening, summer's end. And to say what I'm illustrating this with, here's my painting. There are two main characters in the story I'm going to tell you, and one is the Dagda. He is the wizard, the archdruid, and this is the terrible young woman with all the hair. That's my painting there. And you can't really have a portrait of the Dagda, but you can see him through his attributes, and so that's what I'll kind of show you here. Here you see this is to represent the shillelagh of Dagda. The name Dagda comes from Dagos, the good. He is the good father, the fe, like that. And this shillelagh is very, strongly personified, as it seems it's inhabited by a life force. And the Dagda, as he would be walking along with his shillelagh, he had some way of tipping it from side to side, so he could lay one side down low and he could raise the other side up high. So the bad karma would be knocked down and the good karma could be raised up. So he was a kind of an amazing character with a huge cape that he wore, and he also had other attributes here. This is his bowl of plenty that was fastened to his belt. It was a bowl that forever provided food, a food providing bowl, whatever that food was, but this is representing that. And the other thing here that's going to figure in the story, this is the comb and the wheel. We put it in simple words here. And this is their compact form. When they're called to duty, these implements have amazing, immense dynamicity, that you'll hear in the story here. And over here, this is, like I say, this is Ogma. Ogma would be like the godson of the Dagda. The Dagda would be like, our maternal godfather, or anything like that. And also the druid. So this image here of Ogma, his full name is Ogma Gren. That means that he is the son of Gren, who is the sun. And he embodies her light. So he's also called her Machsabul. He is, her emblem of her light. And he also embodies the knowledge, the Eolas, of the druid, his godfather here. And he also carries a staff, a shillelagh, called Finmikul, like that. And what it has with it not only can render the person holding it invisible, but it also secretes a kind of milky substance, which is like the nectar of immortality for the immortal spirits, And the signet on his chest there says that he is always open. He's always ready to open. And his face and headdress represents the sun, and these are the eyelashes of Gren, by which he saw how to devise the Ogam system of writing, which his name is written as Ogma, right there. So he's a very spiritual component, and his image is itself a touchstone. However he is signified, that is him there. And down here, if you can see down here. I put this painting here. This is Claudia's painting. I was looking for something that would resonate with all of this, and this is Claudia, who's behind the camera there. This is her painting, and so it's resonating with all this. And if we can go all the way over here, you can see I have a harp. I don't have a harpist today, but I have the harp because the harp figures into this story. So some of it you'll look at me, and some of it you can look at her, and so forth, and see how this goes. So we're now in the evening, the first evening, who knows, time immemorial, that is going to be the Salvan evening. And they are these two personages, walking about out there. It's a very, very, very dark evening, like that. So dark that these two persons bumped into each other. Boom, like that. And there was, of course, a startleization in that. And that startleization very much affected this terrible young woman. So much so, she probably screamed. As she did, her hair flew up. It flew up and kept going and flowing up. Hair, everywhere. It filled the sky and even blotted out the darkness. It was so heavy, so woolly, and so full, like that. Of course, Mr. Dagda himself was really taken aback, practically breathless. Who wouldn't be? Like that. But then there was a genuine concern came up in his mind here. All that hair up there in the sky is just not going to hang around up there like, nature's clouds. So those noodles of oodles begin to come down, begin to descend down. And the Dagda thought, if this keeps going this way, I'm going to run out of room to breathe. In other words, I better do something or I will be smothered, like that. So, I am knowledge, I am thought, I am mind. What do I do to cope with this? What? Hair, senor, hair. What does hair need? Hair needs a comb. A comb. So, the Dagda, the wizard, he conjured up a comb. Of course, it had to be a very big comb because there's a lot of hair. So, up comes this comb. This big comb, this is my emblem for that comb, like that. So now, how am I going to do it? I certainly can't hold in my hand a comb of this size and think I'm stroking a toddler's head. This comb has to have some way to comb that mass of hair. How about a wheel, senor? A wheel. So the wizard conjured up a wheel, a big wheel, a giant wheel. And somehow, by some magic incantation, he got the wheel and the comb together. That's all well and nice. Now, how are we going to get this to work, to function? Yes. Are you ready for duty? Hair and comb and wheel, like that. So he, just like Lone Ranger calling for his horse Silver, he conjured up his harp. And he began to play his harp. And as he did so, the wheel began to roll, and the teeth of the comb began to harmoniously move in a rhythm to the music of the harp, and went through the many strands and oodles of her hair, like that. Soothing and coaching, like that. Calming. Remember, this hair got started with a terrible fright, so it does need some real calming, like that. So as he began to play his harp, so that comb and that wheel could do their very best to calm down the terrible young woman's wild, woolly tresses. And eventually they did. The wild, woolly tresses, calmed down more and more and more until peace came about like that. And with this, the woman could say, "Oh, my fair fiddly fie, you are the greatest poet alive." So that's really a wonder to get that kind of affirmation from her like that. And indeed, he is, the fair fiddly fie, the greatest poet alive here. So you would think all of that was settled, just like that. But there's more to it than that, You had this giant wheel, and it was rolling back and forth, supporting this giant comb to comb her wild woolly tresses. Well, you ever seen wheels in the ruts they make? This wheel, of course, was a giant wheel, so guess what kind of a rut it made? And where was that rut? That rut was right here in the ground, right here on this good old solid earth. That wheel had rolled back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. So that rut got deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And so deep, something started to happen. You could hear it. It sounded like a creak. It was creaking, creaking and creaking until finally that creak opened into a crevice. And then something even more surprising, unexpected, and horrible. There was this popping, cracking sound. It was like that, popping and cracking through the night. And what it was down there under the ground, under the earth, in that world below, everybody who had ever lived and died, and maybe a few other things that had ever lived and died, began to emerge, free themselves from that underworld through this huge crevice in the ground. And as they hit the atmosphere, they popped. Like that. And so you can see where this was leading to. Where it led to, evidently, like that, is after that, this was known as Nut Crack Night, because that's what it sounded like. So the ancient Celts, they were pretty smart people. They knew how to deal with spiritual things very well, So they did have children, and they did dress their children up in strange outfits, costumes, and what like that, to go around to people's huts, hovels, houses, whatever they may be, and knock on their doors or their blankets like that and say, "I want some nuts. Give me some nuts, or else I will cause trouble for you." So that was the first bidding. Somewhere along the line, these little demons, bypassed, asking for nuts and decided to ask for candy instead. So now it's become, for Nut Crack Night, it also is furnished with a lot of candy. And so that's how we have now the particular Halloween celebrations that we have. And that you can see how all this got started way back there with Ladagda and the terrible young woman with all her wild woolly hair. So that would be the end of my story now. Thank you very much.